What's up, guys? Jacob Barnhill here with the Barnhill team at eXp Realty today. I'm excited to talk to you guys about a true passion of mine is creative options with real estate and how those apply to you as a traditional consumer. And also, if you want to get into the investing side of real estate. So I think it's prudent to start off with my background, my story. I was in the military, I was an Air Force guy. I was in Washington State, and there was a business at the time called wholesaling. It's still around, it's been around for a long time, and you guys may have heard of it. I got into real estate like most people. They wanted to make a good living, they wanted to make a decent amount of income. They wanted to help people. They wanted to. I wasn't the guy that got in and said I love to look at homes. I like to look at homes. I used to go to open houses with family members when I was a kid. I was not that guy. I was very numbers based. Was very people oriented. I always have been the guy that wants to do the right thing, and help people and and be honest. I've had a lot of feedback on appointments that I've been to, and people hire me on that fact. And I say that because there can be a lot of shicey stuff in the investment side of the business, and there can be a lot of shicey stuff even in the traditional side of the business as well. And that's one of the reasons I took on what I've taken on and consider myself a true option specialist, right? We have three unique abilities with our team, three things that are unique about us. Number one, we are veteran owned and operated. Number two, we are certified to help you get up to 18% more than methods of traditional real estate agents for lots of different reasons. There's lots of variables, the pricing strategy, highest and best system, pre-appraisal packages, talking about home warranties, the negotiation strategies and certifications we have. There's a bunch of factors that go into doing that. That second unique ability. The third unique ability is options. And what did those actually mean to you? So, me cutting my teeth, not being licensed, and on the investing side of the business, what I used to actually do was work for a company as an acquisition specialist. And I would go out to these appointments that would be set for me, and I would meet a seller who a lot of times were ready to give up their home, and we would make cash offers on the homes. And it wouldn't work for everybody. And my job wasn't to go out there and snake them into doing something they didn't want to do. My job was to go out there and provide an option to people that wanted it, that needed to be gone, that needed the problem, the pain to be eliminated. And what I found was the majority of people that I met didn't want to choose that option, but there was, just like anything with sales or in business, it's a numbers game a lot of times, especially in this line of work. And I found that out very early on, and I started to put two and two together, and I looked at, well, most of these people are not choosing this option. It was actually less than 10% of the people that I met with, and um, they ended up listing with an agent. And I was like, well, I'm doing all this work, why don't I get licensed too and start providing, they can, and just give people a choice. And in doing that, I also found out there's lots of other ways that we can solve problems for people. And that involves a lot of different things. I'm going to go into a couple different ones today, ones that I've had most experience with, and ones that I've helped my parents put together, and one that we might be putting together this evening with one of my sellers who's doing traditional, and I'm able to combine some of the traditional and the creative methods, and we're able to help her get more money combining the unique ability number one, two, and three. So it's not just clear cut paths here. So a lot of people think that if a real estate agent is going to offer you cash for your home, right? And they might not be the ones buying it. Each agent's different, right? They might be the ones buying it. They might not be. Either way, at least in South Carolina, I'm pretty sure across the United States and anywhere else, you'd have to disclose that you're a real estate agent. And there's a lot of rules. Our brokerage, the National Association of Realtors, if you're an actual realtor, uh, the you know, SC regulations on this stuff that they have for uh, transparency and equal housing laws. There's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of potholes that we can fall into and lose our license, or at least get hefty fines put on us. So we have to be out there doing a good job. Do people get away with a lot? They most certainly do. Should you work with someone that you trust? You absolutely should. And it's somebody who's going to be transparent with you. So I say all that to say, obviously, do your research. You should, make sure that you're asking great questions when you have some coming out that's giving you some options, because a lot of these things are not known by the masses, right? And there could be an ulterior motive behind some of this. There could be a lot of strong ties and relationships with an agent and an investor. There's a lot of gray area in some of this stuff. But at the end of the day, the way that I look at providing options to people is actually empowering the seller with the experience that I have, right? I know that we could make money either way if we're selling a property. And I have to follow a lot of the realtor code, if you will, right? And do the right thing for people and disclose. So, with that being known, it's nice to be able to know the things that our guys know, our agents and me on the team, and we can lay out a plan depending on what it is. Sometimes we get in front of people and we understand what's going on. We might offer these options and they didn't even realize, they didn't even call upon us to do this. They just wanted to get rid of a house. Okay. So let me start with one example. I had a guy call me. He wanted to sell his house for $45,000 in the, if you're familiar with the Columbia area, in 29209. And homes at that time probably would have went for 110. It needed work. There was a tenant that didn't do a great job. He had tried to put together a creative structure with the neighbor that ended up falling apart. They didn't do it right. And that neighbor put a tenant in there that destroyed the property. So he got the property back. The neighbor didn't end up purchasing the property. And if you don't know everything I'm talking about, maybe some of you do, it's okay. The point is, he was distraught. He thought he was going to have to come to the closing table with money and or be stuck with this property or have to try to fix it up. And we ended up being able to put over $20,000 more than he thought he was going to get in his pocket. He told us that saved his marriage. He said it rekindled relationships with his wife. They were, both had ties to the property, ended up getting some actual cash in their pocket, relieved this burden. And we took a guy that we could have just offered him cash and bought his property and just put a few $1,000s in his pocket. But I saw an opportunity to get him the most amount of money. And that's what he said he wanted to do. There's other situations where someone had come to me and they wanted to rent out their property or see if they could Airbnb their property. And I've told them that they could in fact, do that. And I didn't make any money on that. And then if they want to buy more, is really the benefit to me is the long game. I get the referrals because I was a good guy. I went out there and it was based on trust and things of that nature. So here's another example. We went out to an individual's homes. This individual had multiple homes that had been handed over to her through her family. And if you're not familiar, the IRS, I'm not, I don't work for the IRS. I'm not a CPA or bookkeeper or any of that stuff. If any of this stuff comes out of my mouth and you said it was, my advice, that's not true. This is just a unique story. And you guys have to go talk to professionals. That's my disclosure. I'm only a lowly real estate agent, but I know a few things. And the IRS will allow you to depreciate a property. We can get some tax benefits on rental property and primary homes, but these were rental properties. And they had hit the max in what the IRS would allow you to do. Therefore, in this unique circumstance, they were going to have to pay a lot more in capital gains tax when they sold. And these properties needed work, all 5 of them. And she didn't have the money to fix them up. She also didn't have the money to pay the capital gains that they were going to have to pay on these properties. It was just, she was caught between a rock and a hard place. So we could have listed them, but she was going to be out of money. She would have had to come to the closing table if we were able to sell them. This was a okay area, right? This was not a phenomenal area. And what we ended up doing was we took over payments on those properties. I took over payments. We disclosed we were real estate agents. We disclosed, what options she had. She could fix them up, all this stuff. But we have this other option that you could do, and we would take over the payments. So I actually paid her a few $1,000s for the properties up front. Obviously, she had very few options. She was not going to make the money that she did. We were able to solve the problem and one up that. It put some extra money in her pocket. We took over payments and turned these into rental properties. We put the money in them. The benefit to us was that we had the money to put into them, fix them up, and get them renting correctly. She had tenants with subpar rents because the properties were in subpar condition for a long time and was bleeding cash. So we actually relieved a burden for her. We did everything legally. We had an attorney draft up the documents, right? We gave her a little bit of money on the front and a little bit on the back end when we ultimately sold these properties years later. And we solved the problem for her. There was a benefit to us, of course. We disclosed all of that. We had money flow through an account that neither of us could pull money out of. It was a third-party account, and all that money went into that account, and it would flow to the bank. That's the right way to do it, right? And it would go to the bank to continue to pay off the mortgage. So there's a lot of things that you would want to know if you were to structure a deal that way that I can help you guys do. We've even had very unique situations that we were able to capitalize on, maybe like tonight, maybe not maybe, this is exactly like what I've done with my parents actually before, knowing that a very unique situation that we were able to sell to someone that was willing to pay more for the property. Why would someone do that? Again, very unique situation that would not have been uh, any other buyer if it not had been family land that they wanted back in the family. Uh, my parents ended up paying more because they weren't represented by an agent at the time of them buying some of the land, and I tried to recoup some of that loss for them because they weren't able to sell their property at what they wanted to. They didn't recoup it all, but I was able to recoup some of what they had with a second mortgage. So the loan only was able to qualify for a certain amount, and then we put a second loan in place and then set up a similar thing, all the money flowing through proper accounts. We had attorneys draft up the documents, things like that. So there are literally dozens of ways to be able to put a deal together. And this might be going way over some of your heads, but sitting with a true professional that knows options, that's able to put different deals together, is 100% somebody that you want in your court, especially when things get tricky, right? And you never think that they're going to get tricky until they do, right? This evening, I'm not going to go into too many details, but a very traditional home in very great shape, very traditional sale. But we've got some things going on that if somebody wasn't actually in the know, that they wouldn't know. And from my seller's situation would have never thought that anything like this was going to come up, but we're able to get very creative with different things. So we have options. Most people, do they use stuff like this? No, they don't. Um, what I typically see is people are interested in traditional sales. They're interested to see cash sales. They want to see what those look like side by side and compare what are my nets. If I was to actually fix this home up, pay commissions, closing costs, maybe the buyer's going to ask for some costs too, add all this up, what's my net, right? And say you're selling the home for $250,000, right? Versus the cash side, it's worth $250,000. I have no commissions, I have no showings, I have no closing costs. Sometimes a cash buyer will pay your seller closing costs. You, as the seller, have closing costs if you did not know that. The buyer has their costs and the seller has theirs. Well, your buyer actually will pay. Your cash buyer might pay. And then we eliminate all of those things, you have a lower offer than you otherwise would have had here, but you didn't put in all the work, the closing costs, the commissions, and other things, right? And we might end up somewhere close. I've seen people a lot of times when we start getting into the $10,000, $20,000 range and they start taking a cash offer. That's just one example of someone taking a cash offer. There's lots of different reasons someone might take a cash offer, lots of different reasons. Taking over payments is very common. I've seen people, as long as it's done right, the fear I know a lot of times is with sellers is, are you going to do what you say you're going to do? And a lot of times people want to be cashed out right away. If this is an extra property, sometimes, you might you might have that flexibility. Sometimes you might have costs that you're going to incur that you weren't expecting, and then now you're stuck just having to incur those costs. For example, again, I'm not a CPA, but a lot of times I see sellers that lived in the property at one time. They couldn't sell, right? They couldn't sell the property, and the market was different, right? And so they ended up renting it. And now they've passed a time that the IRS allows them to waive a capital gains tax, means you have extra equity, you have some money that's actually going to come back to you, and the IRS won't actually tap into that. You get all that back in a lot of cases if it was a primary residence. But there are certain exclusions. For example, in most cases, after 5 years of you not living in the home, any 2 consecutive years out of the last 5 years is, I believe, the rule. Again, not a CPA, just a lowly real estate agent. Uh, then you would be waived. And then there's certain tax brackets, whether you're filing jointly or married or whatever. Again, check with your CPA or your bookkeeper, your tax person on this stuff. But and I've seen people go outside that window, okay, and then they have to pay all this capital gains tax on this stuff, 20, 25, 30% capital gains, uh, and they're not making squat after they, pay all the fees and the commissions and all this stuff. So having some creative options sometimes might be some things. I could keep going. There's dozens and dozens of ways and scenarios. Sometimes I have to sit back and think. I have books near my bedstand. This conference right here is one we're getting ready to do a 2-day. I've been to just as many realtor conferences and education events as I probably have with investors. I hang out and mingle with the investors. I'm very familiar with being able to put together uh, very creative deals. If you or anyone you know want to use option 3 of our unique ability, right? Compare it with option 2, sell your home for more, right? Or look at some options. We can give you a side-by-side comparison and let you choose. That's the power in what we're able to do in a very truthful manner, and empowering you as the homeowner in a very simple manner, right? Do you want to make this much or this much? Do you want to sell tomorrow, or do you want to do the work and do some other things? That's the very simplistic version of it, right? But there's lots of things that could go into it. Longer video today. However, I thought would be kind of cool to talk about options today and give you guys some insight on some of the creative side of real estate and some things that we're able to do. So you guys know how to reach us. If you guys have any insight, you want to comment on anything that we talked about today. If you want to see a different topic, hit us up in the chat down there in the comment box. Like and subscribe. Of course, we love that. And you know how to reach us if you guys or anyone you know needs help. We'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.